There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello, BookTube. I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel and to another episode of Zooming In, which is no longer a new series because I've been saying that for too many weeks, but it's a somewhat new series on my channel where I engage with bookish social media luminaries the world over to talk about bookish or literary stuff, bouncing off an article that's been published online. So, how delighted am I to welcome for certainly not her first appearance on my channel. I think it might be a 101st appearance on my channel, but her debut appearance on this series, Lindy of the fabulous BookTube channel, Lindy's Magpie Reads. Hey, Lindy.
Hey, Sean, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy to be called a luminary, too.
There you are, Lindy the Luminary. And we're here to talk about an article that as soon as I saw it, I thought, oh, Lindy, this needs to be a Zooming In episode with Lindy. It is from the magazine Poets and Writers, and it was in the September-October 2023 issue. It's really actually an interview, but the article is entitled The Written Image, My Brilliant Friend by Jen de Gregario. Jen de Gregario is interviewing Mara Cerri, who is a artist and graphic artist who has adapted the famous novel My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante into a graphic novel. And this is an interview with that artist. Lindy is big into graphic works of all kinds. And so I thought this would be a great opportunity for us to chat about graphic adaptations of print-based fictional texts, as well as chatting about this book. And as usual, Lindy went above and beyond the call of duty and has done a whole bunch of reading that she's going to tell us about now, but not only this article. So, Lindy, what did you make of this article?
I really enjoyed it. I love that Cerri talked about her art choices. I'm always interested in how artists decide how they're going to portray a story. And so she talked about color, for example, and she talked about how Elena Ferrante has a real physicality to her writing. And so Cerri tried to capture that with the textural aspect of her art itself. It makes me even more excited to read this. I didn't even know that there was a graphic adaptation of the Neapolitan Quartet.
Yes, and I should have said that more specifically at the beginning. The first one, My Brilliant Friend, publishes in October. So, and then there's more to come. But yeah, the first one is coming out from Europa, I think.
Yep. Yes, that's correct.
From Europa, and this is the first one.
It's mentioned in this interview that Mara Cerri illustrated Elena Ferrante's first picture book. It's called The Beach at Night in English, and it was also published by Europa. I was able to get a copy of The Beach at Night and read it prior to us having this conversation.
The text for this graphic novel was adapted from Ferrante's language by the Italian writer Chiara Lagani, and then translated into English by Anne Goldstein, who is also the translator of the Neapolitan Quartet.
Right. Chiara Lagani is a playwright, and I think that will stand her in good stead, too, for really shortening down a long novel, My Brilliant Friend, into something of graphic novel length. And there is just a short preview that is included in the interview in the magazine, just two panels, actually.
Let's put those on the screen. I think it'll be okay to show them, yep, while you're talking about them.
Mara Cerri mentions that that visual is really carrying the story. There's not a lot of text. So,
yes. How did that resonate, if it did, with the children's book that you read?
The children's book actually has a lot of text. And normally in a picture book, it's about half and half. And I would say that The Beach at Night is quite text heavy. So a lot of text compared to the number of illustrations. So it would be a picture book for older readers, like grade 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, kind of in there. And I also think there's enough in the picture book we're still talking about, The Beach at Night, for adults as well. It's a story that's told from the point of view of a doll who gets left behind on a beach, and she has some pretty scary adventures.
Let's put our cards on the table. Have you read My Brilliant Friend by Elena Ferrante in the text version?
I sure have, and I loved it.
And I have not. Okay. And did you read it in Italian or English or French?
I read it in English.
English, okay.
And the setting really comes through in that novel. It's set in Naples. And that's another thing that Cerri mentions, how in the opening of the graphic novel version, it's very much the scenery, the setting of the city.
I would like to read one of the interview questions and then the paragraph long, it's a fairly short paragraph, but the paragraph long answer from Mariah, because to me, this is the heart of the article. And then I'd like you to riff on it however you see fit. The question was, why make a graphic version of the novel at all? And the answer I just thought was quite profound. Because every form of language has the power to reveal new points of view of a story. This is intrinsic in the very nature of comics and graphic novels, since they draw on the symbolic power of images. From the collision between words and images, new narrative circuits are generated, associations that act deeply on the reader. I have been profoundly changed by the experience of illustrating My Brilliant Friend, because somehow the journey made by Ferrante's characters, Lila and Lenu, has pierced through me. I just thought that was incredible. Your thoughts?
I agree. And this is exactly why I love finding graphic novel versions of stories that I've read. Yes. It's different from rereading the same text, which I also enjoy doing, but reading a story told in a different way, well, in this case, in a graphic novel format, I feel like I just get so much out of it. Yeah.
So what are some of the graphic novel adaptations of fictional texts that you would recommend the most highly?
Well, if I know Shakespeare's not your thing, but there is a fantastic adaptation of Hamlet called Hamlet Staged on the Page. It's by an Australian cartoonist, Nicki Greenberg. And I could watch Hamlet on the stage, performances of Hamlet over and over, and just see how different productions bring out different things. And this graphic novel adaptation brought new surprises to me and new pleasures too. Yeah, I really, really love that one. I like classics done in graphic novel format. At one point, I read 2 different graphic novel adaptations of Beowulf, and one was done by Gareth Hinds, and the other was by a Spanish duo, Santiago García and David Rubín. The art in them was so different. So Rubín and García, their version was lots of bright red and black. So pretty bloody on the page. And even I remember one point, the hero was eating a cherry and the cherry is squirting, and even that looks violent. versus Gareth Hinds' version of Beowulf was all in grays and blues and golds, very classic looking. It just brings a whole different feel to that very, very ancient tale. But I like them both.
I'm not aware, but there must be at least one graphic adaptation of a Canadian novel. Can you think of one?
Oh, definitely. Anne of Green Gables has had more than one graphic novel adaptation.
That's it.
Yeah. And the most recent one that I read is by a couple of Americans. The artist is Brenna Thummler, and Mariah Marsden did the adaptation of it. And so this is an example of one with very little text. The story is really carried by the images. And I think that it would be a really good starting point for young readers, because Anne of Green Gables is written in challenging language. And so if a young reader sort of has the story in mind, it might make it easier reading the text.
I am famous for making really stupid dad jokes or corny jokes, and I've often quipped that has anybody ever made an audiobook based on a graphic novel? And then I think I did hear of one. Didn't I? Hasn't there been an audiobook made of a graphic novel or a graphic book?
Definitely more than one. Nimona by Noella Stevenson. That was made into an audiobook with full cast and lots of sound effects. So it was a great adaptation.
It had to be a really quite significant adaptation. Like they would have had to add lots of scriptive or sound effects to replicate all the non-speaking things going on in the pictures.
Well,
I can't get my head around that.
Well, it's an adaptation, just like when a novel is adapted into a movie. There's various decisions that are made because the format of cinema is different than print, and the format of audio is different than print. It's different than graphic novel. So there's adaptations that happen all the time. I find it pretty exciting. The only other thing that I took note of in this interview is that there's been an HBO series done of this quartet, and I didn't know that. And also some staged productions, which I was unaware of. So I feel like I learned stuff from this.
I'm going to take a wild guess that you've read all or most of Elena Ferrante's stuff that's been translated.
Well, I read all 4 novels in the quartet and a couple of her standalone novels as well, plus the picture book. So is My Brilliant Friend the place to start with Ferrante? Obviously, well, it's not obvious with somebody like you because you're famous for starting a series in the middle or at the end and then going back or whatever. But for most people, they would start the series with My Brilliant Friend. Is that the place to start with Elena Ferrante? Yeah, I would say definitely start with My Brilliant Friend.
You've said My Brilliant Friend several times, but you weren't actually addressing me.
What?
I'm not your brilliant friend. Every time you said it, I pricked up my ears. Oh, that's very nice, Lindy. But I finally realized, no. One last question, Lindy. We all know that Elena Ferrante is a pseudonym, so I want to conclude this chat by asking you, are you Elena Ferrante?
No, Sean, I'm not. And if I was, I would tell you.
Okay. All right. Thanks, Lindy.
Because you're my brilliant friend.